The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had seen species rise and fall. They had watched empires crumble into dust. And in all that time, one truth remained constant. When the came, worlds surrendered. They were not like other species. They were made of living crystal, their bodies tall and beautiful like sculptures carved from frozen light. When they moved, colors danced inside them. When they spoke, their voices sounded like glass singing in the wind. They were ancient. They were powerful, and they had never lost a war. They did not need to fight most wars. They simply arrived with their massive fleet, blocked out the sun with their ships, and waited. Every species in the galaxy understood the same basic truth. Survival mattered more than pride. When you saw 800 warships hanging above your world, you calculated the odds. You counted your ships against theirs. You measured your weapons against their technology. And then you surrendered. It was simple mathematics. On a cold morning in the year 2247, the fleet arrived at Earth. Admiral stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the Unconquered Dawn. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him, Commander worked at her tactical station, her fingers moving fast across the glowing displays. Around them, the bridge crew watched their screens in silence. Through the main window, they could see the alien ships. There were so many that they formed a dark cloud between Earth and the sun. Sol, the city below them, had grown dim under the shadow of the invasion. "They are sending a message," Lieutenant said from the communication station. Her voice was calm but could see her hands shaking slightly. "On all channels, sir." "Put it on screen." The hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. The High Commander was impressive and terrible. It stood 8 feet tall, its crystalline body filled with shifting colors of purple and gold. Light bent around it in strange ways, making it hard to look at directly. "Primitive beings," the alien spoke. Its voice sounded like ice cracking in a frozen lake. "I am High Commander of the Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You have 72 of your hours to surrender completely. You will give us your planet. You will give us your resources. You will give us your species to serve us forever." The High Commander paused, and something like amusement flickered through its crystal form. "Resistance is not merely futile, it is incomprehensible. In 12,000 years, no species has ever refused us. Consider this carefully. We have studied your kind. You are clever for primitives. We expect you will make the logical choice." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Could hear the hum of the ship's engines, the soft beeping of instruments, the breathing of his crew. He could feel their fear. He understood it. He shared it. But he had learned long ago that fear was just another feeling. You could feel it and still do what needed to be done. "Commander," he said quietly, "fleet status." His voice was steady, but her words were grim. "We have 47 ships, Admiral. They have approximately 800. Our weapons are about 60 years behind their technology. Our shields can survive maybe 3 direct hits before failing." "I see." Lieutenant turned in her chair. "Sir, should I prepare a response? The Council President is asking for our recommendation." Did not answer immediately. He walked to the main window and looked out at the alien fleet. So many ships, so much power. Any logical species would look at those numbers and choose survival. The problem was, humans had never been very good at being logical. "Open a channel to the flagship," ordered. The hologram of High Commander reappeared. "You wish to discuss the terms of your surrender?" "No," said simply. "I wanted to give you a chance. One chance to turn your ships around. One chance to go back to your council and tell them that Earth is not worth the cost." The alien made a sound like shattering glass, realized it was laughing. "You threaten us?" asked, its colors swirling with amusement. "You with your tiny fleet. You whose entire military we could destroy in minutes. This is your response to our generous offer." "It is not a threat," replied. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "It is a warning. You have spent 12,000 years conquering species who looked at the numbers and chose to live. You have never faced a species like us. And what makes you different from the 1,000 other species who thought themselves special?" Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had already accepted what was coming and had decided not to be afraid of it. "We do not calculate odds," he said. "We calculate spite. When you threaten our homes, our families, our world, we do not think about survival. We think about how much it will cost you to take them from us. We think about making you bleed for every inch of ground. We think about making sure that even if we lose, you will remember us forever." High Commander was silent for a moment. The colors in its crystal body shifted, showing confusion for the first time. "This is irrational," it finally said. "This is self-destruction." "Maybe," agreed, "but it is who we are. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have invented 1,000 ways to kill and 1,000 more ways to survive. We have burned our own cities rather than let enemies take them. We have starved in sieges for years rather than surrender. We have walked into certain death with songs on our lips." He stepped closer to the hologram, his old face hard as stone. "You should have done your research, High Commander. You picked the wrong planet." The transmission ended with a sharp click. The bridge crew stared at their admiral. Some looked terrified, some looked confused, but others, the ones who had served with the longest, wore expressions of fierce pride. "Sir," Commander said softly, "they will attack now. We cannot win a direct battle." "I know," turned to face his crew. These men and women had families on the planet below. They had parents and children and lovers who were counting on them, and they were about to fight a war they could not win. "Listen to me," he said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "We are going to lose the first battle. We may lose many battles, but we are not going to lose this war. Because they have ships and weapons and technology, but we have something they have never faced before. We have the one thing that has carried humanity through every disaster, every plague, every war in our history." "What is that, sir?" asked. Allowed himself another smile. "Stubbornness, pure, irrational, magnificent stubbornness." He pointed toward the alien fleet. "They expect us to surrender. They expect us to be rational. They expect us to give up when the math says we cannot win." His eyes blazed. "They are about to learn that humans do not care about math." He turned to, "Contact Captain on the research station. Tell him Project Persistence is now active. Whatever he needs, he gets. Priority 1. "Yes, sir." Looked once more at the alien fleet, then walked toward his command chair. "And someone get me some coffee. It is going to be a long war." The bridge burst into activity. Officers shouted orders. Screens flickered with tactical data. Somewhere far below, on the surface of Earth, billions of people were looking up at the darkened sky, wondering what would happen next. They did not know it yet, but they were about to witness something the galaxy had never seen. They were about to watch humanity go to war not for victory, but for defiance. Not for survival, but for the simple, stubborn refusal to bend. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. Earth would teach them what it meant to pay for every single one. The fleet moved with perfect coordination. Their ships flowed through space like water, each one knowing exactly where to go and what to do. They had done this hundreds of times before. They expected the humans to form defensive lines, to protect their planet, to fight in patterns they could predict and destroy. They were wrong. Admiral had given simple orders to his fleet: do not fight to win, fight to hurt, fight to cost them ships, fight to make them remember. The human fleet scattered like seeds in the wind. Instead of forming lines, they broke into small groups of 3 or 4 ships. They darted between the massive cruisers, firing at weak points, then running before the aliens could respond. They attacked supply ships. They rammed communication relays. They did everything wrong according to standard military tactics. And they made the bleed. Captain commanded the destroyer Defiant Hope. She was 41 years old, a calm woman with steady hands and a reputation for doing impossible things. When the battle began, her ship was one of the first to engage. Enemy cruiser at bearing 270, her weapons officer reported. They are charging weapons. Get close, ordered. Get so close they cannot fire without hitting themselves. The Defiant Hope dove toward the cruiser like a knife aimed at a giant's heart. Around them, space lit up with weapon fire. Felt her ship shake as a blast clipped their shields, but she did not slow down. They got close, too close. The cruiser tried to fire, but at this range its weapons were too powerful. The blast would damage its own hull. It hesitated. Did not hesitate. All weapons fire. The Defiant Hope poured everything it had into the cruiser's engine section. For 3 seconds, the human ship became a creature of pure violence, every gun blazing, every missile launching. Then they turned and ran, leaving the crippled cruiser spinning in space. Direct hits, the weapons officer shouted. Their engines are gone. It was a small victory. One crippled cruiser out of 800. But across the battle, other human ships were doing the same thing. They fought like wasps attacking a bear, stinging and retreating, always moving, never letting the enemy catch them. They were not ready for this. Their tactics were built for species that formed lines and fought in order. These humans fought like chaos itself. 3 hours into the battle, the Defiant Hope took a direct hit. Felt the ship lurch beneath her feet. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. Damage report, she demanded. Shields are gone, her first officer said, his voice tight with pain. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 12. Engines at 30%. We have lost 40 crew members. Closed her eyes for a moment. 40 people, 40 lives. Some of them she had known for years. Some of them had children waiting at home. Can we still fight? We can fight, confirmed, but we cannot survive another hit like that. Through the crack could see a command ship. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of her destroyer. Its crystal hull glowed with power, and it was moving toward the heart of the human fleet. If it reached the main formation, it would tear through their ships like paper. She made her decision. All hands, said, her voice calm and clear. This is the captain, abandon ship. Get to the escape pods, you have 3 minutes. The bridge crew stared at her. Captain said carefully, what are you planning? I am going to ram that command ship. She said it simply, like she was discussing the weather. Their shields cannot stop solid matter at high speed. If I hit their engine core, I will take them with us. That is suicide. No, replied. That is mathematics, my life for a ship that will kill thousands. It is a good trade. She looked at her crew, these men and women who had trusted her with their lives. Now go, that is an order. They went. Some of them cried. Some of them saluted. All of them understood that they were watching something important. They were watching a woman choose sacrifice over survival. Was the last to leave. Captain, he said at the door, I will tell your daughter. I will tell her what you did. Smiled, tell her I love her. Tell her to be brave. Then she was alone on the bridge. She locked the doors. She aimed her dying ship at the command vessel. She pushed the engines past their breaking point, feeling the ship shake and scream around her. The enemy ship tried to move, but it was too slow. The Defiant Hope, trailing fire and debris, slammed into its crystal hull like a missile made of pure human stubbornness. The explosion lit up the battle like a new sun. When it faded, the command ship was gone. So were 2 cruisers that had been too close. So was Captain. Her last transmission had been picked up by every human ship in the system. For everyone I have ever loved, make it count. Across the battle, other humans heard those words and found new courage. Ensign was 22 years old, barely out of training. His weapons platform had taken heavy damage, and standard procedure said he should evacuate. Instead, he climbed into the manual control bay, a tiny room filled with heat and sparks, and he fired weapons until the platform melted around him. He destroyed 3 enemy fighters before he died. Lieutenant Commander led a boarding party onto a ship. No species had ever done this before. The idea of entering an enemy vessel and fighting hand-to-hand was unthinkable to most aliens. But her team of 50 Marines cut through the hull with plasma torches, climbed inside, and fought the crystal soldiers in the corridors. The battle lasted 18 hours, lost 30 of her people. But when it was over, she stood on the bridge of a cruiser, the first human to capture an alien warship. "This ship belongs to Earth now," she reported, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. "Send a recovery team." The Battle of Earth lasted 6 hours. On paper, it should have lasted 6 minutes. The humans lost 31 ships. Most of their fleet was damaged. Thousands of people died in the cold darkness of space. But the lost 57 ships. In 12,000 years of conquest, they had never lost 57 ships in a single engagement. They had never lost 57 ships in an entire war. Their perfect record of easy victory was broken, and they did not understand how. On the flagship, High Commander reviewed the casualty reports. The colors in its crystal body flickered with something that might have been anger, or confusion, or fear. "Explain this," it demanded. A tactical officer stepped forward, its form trembling slightly. "Commander, the humans used unusual tactics. They sacrificed vessels that could have retreated safely. They took actions that guaranteed their own destruction. They fought as if they did not care about their own survival." All species care about survival. It is the fundamental law of biology. "Yes, Commander, but these humans—" The officer paused, struggling to find words. "They seem to value something else more than their own lives." Was silent for a long time. "They are fools," it finally said. "They delayed us by a few hours and lost their fleet. Now they have nothing left to fight with." "Yes, Commander." But deep in its crystal core felt a new sensation. It had conquered 1,000 worlds. It had broken 100 species. And for the first time in its long existence, it wondered if it had made a mistake. Far below, on the surface of Earth, Admiral received the battle reports in his underground bunker. 31 ships gone, thousands of good people dead. By any measure, they had lost. But when he looked at the casualty numbers, he smiled. "They thought the first battle would break us," he said to Commander. "They thought we would see our ships burning and beg for mercy. Instead, they lost 57 ships to a fleet that should not have scratched their paint." His old eyes blazed with fierce light. "They have 800 ships. We just proved we can trade 3 of ours for 5 of theirs. If we can keep that ratio, we can hurt them, really hurt them." Nodded slowly. "But sir, we cannot fight another battle like that. We do not have the ships." "Then we will not fight that kind of battle." Pulled up a map of Earth on his screen. Forests, mountains, oceans, deserts, a whole planet of hiding places. "We lost in space because that is where they are strong. Now we make them come to us. We make them fight on our ground, in our cities, in our jungles and caves." He thought of Captain, ramming her dying ship into the enemy. He thought of Ensign, firing until his weapons melted. He thought of all the brave people who had died in the darkness. "They wanted Earth," said softly. "Now we are going to show them what that means. We are going to make them pay for every inch of ground in blood. And when they are done, even if they win, they will look at this planet and curse the day they ever heard the word human." The war was just beginning. 6 months after the first battle, they controlled Earth's orbit. Their ships hung above the planet like dark clouds, blocking the sun for hours each day. They had landed troops on every continent. They had destroyed military bases, bombed government buildings, and announced their rule over humanity. But they did not control Earth, not really, because humans had learned to hide. Admiral operated from a bunker 3 kilometers beneath the mountains of Korea. The tunnels stretched for miles, carved from solid rock, hidden from alien sensors by layers of stone and clever engineering. With him were the surviving military leaders of Earth and something far more dangerous than any army. Scientists. Dr. Minyu had spent 15 years studying particle physics. He had published papers about the nature of matter and the secrets of the universe. When the invasion began, he threw away his research and started building weapons. "They are made of crystal," he explained to the assembled commanders. Maps and diagrams covered the walls around them. Their bodies, their ships, their technology, everything they build is based on perfect crystal structures, atoms arranged in perfect patterns. Commander studied the displays. "We know this. Their materials are stronger than anything we can build." "Yes," Minyu agreed, "but perfect structures have a weakness. They depend on resonance. The atoms vibrate together in harmony. If we disrupt that harmony, the crystal breaks." Finished understanding. "You want to build sonic weapons." "Exactly. Sound cannot travel through space, so it would not help us fight their ships. But when they land," Minyu smiled. It was not a gentle smile. "When they walk on our ground, they become vulnerable. We can kill them with noise." The first sonic emitters were built in secret factories beneath the earth. They were small devices, no bigger than a shoebox, but they produced frequencies that could shatter crystal like glass. Was chosen to test the first one. She was 29 years old, and before the war, she had been a music teacher. She had taught children to play piano and sing songs about love and hope. Now, she led a resistance cell of 40 fighters in what used to be Australia. They had built a mining operation in the outback. They dug precious metals from the earth to fuel their war machines. 200 crystal soldiers guarded the site, confident in their superiority. And her team crawled through the red desert at night. They carried the sonic device in a backpack, along with old rifles and homemade explosives. They were not soldiers. They were farmers and teachers and office workers who had learned to fight because they had no other choice. "Remember," whispered as they reached the ridge overlooking the mining site, "we cannot let them see us. If they spot us before we activate the device, we are all dead." Her second in command, a young man named who had once been an accountant, nodded grimly. "We know the risks." They planted the emitter on the ridge. They placed smaller devices around the perimeter of the mining site, then pressed the activation button and covered her ears. Humans could not hear the frequency, but they could see its effect. The soldiers began to shake. Their crystal bodies, so perfect and beautiful, started to crack. Colors flickered wildly inside them as their internal harmony shattered. They tried to move, to run, to call for help, but the sound was everywhere. Within minutes, 200 crystal soldiers lay in fragments across the red earth. Stood on the ridge and watched. She remembered her students, the children she had taught before the war. Some of them were dead now, killed when the aliens bombed Seoul. She remembered their faces, their laughter, the way they had looked at her with trust and hope. "For you," she whispered, "for all of you." Similar attacks happened across the world. In the mountains of South America, a resistance cell destroyed a communication center. In the frozen wilderness of Siberia, fighters ambushed a convoy of alien vehicles. In the depths of the ocean, where humans had built underwater habitats that could not reach, scientists developed new weapons and shared them through encrypted networks. The humans did not fight fair. They could not afford to. They attacked supply lines. They poisoned water sources that they needed for their crystal growth. They planted traps that waited for weeks before exploding. They turned every building, every forest, every cave into a potential battlefield. They did not understand this kind of war. "They hide like vermin," one commander reported to High Commander. "We destroy one cell and 2 more appear. They attack our isolated units and fade away before we can respond. They never stand and fight. Then we will make them stand and fight, decided. If they will not come to us, we will burn them out. The threat was broadcast on every frequency. Surrender in 30 days, or the destruction of major cities would begin. Tokyo would be first. Received the ultimatum in his bunker. Around him, officers and scientists fell silent. The war had taken everything from them. Their cities were in ruins. Millions of people had died, and now the aliens were threatening to murder millions more. Sir said quietly, we cannot stop an orbital bombardment. If they destroy Tokyo, the other cities will follow. Billions will die. They are bluffing, Minyu said. They need our resources. They will not actually destroy. They are not bluffing, interrupted. They are making a calculation. They believe that threatening our civilians will break our will. They believe we will surrender to save lives. Won't we? Someone asked. Was silent for a moment. He thought about the people above them, the billions of men and women and children who were counting on him to protect them. He thought about the weight of their lives on his shoulders. No, he said finally, because surrendering would not save them. They do not want peace. They want slaves. If we surrender, our people will be put to work for the empire until they die. Our children will grow up in chains. Everything that makes us human will be ground away until nothing is left. He looked at his officers, at the tired faces that had fought for 6 months without hope. Sometimes there are no good choices, he said. Sometimes you can only choose between bad and worse. Surrender is worse, so we fight. How? Demanded. We have no fleet. We have no weapons that can stop orbital bombardment. We have nothing. We have Project Persistence, replied. Minyu, how close are we? The scientist took a deep breath. The prototype is ready for testing. But Admiral, if it works, it will kill every in the system, maybe every connected to their network. We are talking about genocide on a massive scale. And if it does not work, then we all die anyway. Nodded slowly. He was an old man now, tired and worn by war. He had sent thousands of people to their deaths. He had made choices that haunted his sleep. But in this moment he felt a strange peace. Prepare the weapon, he ordered, and tell our resistance cells to get ready. In 30 days, one way or another, this war ends. Across the planet, humans prepared for the final battle. They sharpened weapons. They checked their emitters. They said goodbye to loved ones, knowing that many of them would not survive what was coming. And in a secret laboratory deep beneath the mountains, Dr. Minyu worked on the weapon that would either save humanity or destroy 2 species. He called it the Silicon Plague. It was part virus, part resonance disruptor, part something that should not exist according to known physics. It would spread through the network like fire through dry grass. It would reach into their perfect crystal structures and remind them that they had once been chaos. Are you sure about this? His assistant asked, watching him work. Minyu did not look up from his calculations. No, he admitted. I am not sure about anything. I am a scientist. I understand numbers and patterns and the rules of the universe. But this war is not about numbers. It is about will. Will. They think they can break us because they are stronger. They do not understand that strength is not the only thing that matters. He finally looked up and his eyes were burning with fierce determination. We are weaker than them. Our ships are slower. Our weapons are smaller, but we refuse to give up. We refuse to accept that we cannot win. He held up the prototype, a small device that hummed with strange energy. This is what we are. This is humanity. We take the impossible and we make it possible. We find a way. We always find a way. 30 days began their countdown. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. And somewhere in orbit, High Commander waited with its fleet, certain of victory, unaware that it was about to learn why the galaxy should never challenge humanity. The 30 days passed like a countdown to the end of the world. Across Earth, people watched the sky with fear in their hearts. The fleet hung above them like a threat made solid. Every day, the aliens broadcast reminders of what was coming. Surrender or die. Submit or burn. Tokyo was quiet on the final day. Most people had evacuated to the countryside, but some stayed behind. They were the stubborn ones, the defiant ones, the ones who had decided that if they were going to die, they would die at home. In orbit, the fleet moved into attack position. 800 ships aimed their weapons at the city below. High Commander stood on the bridge of its flagship, satisfaction glowing through its crystal form. "Open a channel to the planet," it ordered. "Let them watch their city die. Let them understand the cost of defiance." The transmission began. Billions of humans around the world saw the alien fleet on their screens. They saw the weapons charging. They saw their own helplessness reflected in the cold light of alien technology. "Humans of Earth," spoke, its voice ringing across the planet, "you have chosen extinction. Let the destruction of your city serve as an example to the—" The transmission stopped. On the flagship, lights flickered. Alarms began to sound. Screens went dark and then flashed with strange patterns. "What is happening?" demanded. "Unknown, Commander," a sensor officer reported, panic rippling through its crystal form. "Our systems are failing. Navigation is corrupted. Weapons targeting is offline." "How is this possible? We are being attacked." "Not exactly, Commander. The fleet network is being consumed." Did not understand the word at first. Then it looked at its own hand and felt cold terror flood through its crystal body. Its fingers were cracking. The silicon plague had been released. Dr. Minu had designed it to exploit this greatest strength, their perfect crystal technology. Every ship, every drone, every soldier in the alien fleet was connected through quantum-entangled crystal matrices. It made them perfectly coordinated. It also made them vulnerable to something that could spread through that network. The plague was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a memory. It carried within it the echoes of chaos, the randomness that existed before order. It whispered to the perfect crystal structures that they did not have to be perfect. It reminded them that their atoms had once been wild and free. And the crystals listened. Across the fleet, ships began to fail. Their perfect structures destabilized as the plague spread from system to system. Crystal soldiers found their bodies losing cohesion. Weapons melted into slag. Engines forgot how to fire. Watched in horror as its crew collapsed around it. Crystal beings that had lived for thousands of years shattered like glass, their fragments scattering across the deck. The colors inside them flickered and died, leaving only dull gray stone. "This is impossible," whispered, its own voice cracking as fissures spread through its body. "No species has ever—" Broadcast incoming. An officer managed to report before it crumbled into pieces. From the human flagship. The screen flickered to life. An admiral's face appeared. He looked old. The months of war had carved deep lines around his eyes. His hair was completely white now, and his uniform was stained and worn. But his voice was steady, and his eyes burned with fierce determination. "High Commander," said, "your fleet is dying. Within 6 hours, every ship in your armada will be destroyed. Your council will receive no distress call because the plague has already spread to your communication networks. No reinforcements will come." Tried to speak, but its voice came out as a crackle of breaking crystal. "You have 2 choices," continued. "Retreat now with whatever ships you can save. Tell your council that Earth is not worth the cost, or stay and watch everything you have burn." "You would destroy us," managed, its form deteriorating rapidly. "You would commit genocide. You would kill an entire species." "No," replied. "We will not pursue you. We will not seek revenge. We are not monsters, but we will protect our own." He leaned forward, and for a moment he looked not like a tired old man, but like something ancient and terrible. like the spirit of every human who had ever refused to surrender, like the collected will of a species that had crawled out of caves and decided to touch the stars. You should have done your research, High Commander. You came here thinking we were primitives. You expected us to calculate the odds and submit. You expected us to be rational. His voice hardened. Instead, we spent the last year studying your biology, your technology, your every weakness. We turned our musicians into soldiers and our scientists into weapon makers. We hid in holes and crawled through sewers and ate rats when we had to. We sacrificed our ships and our lives just to make you bleed. The High Commander was falling apart now, cracks spreading across its entire body. It could feel its consciousness fading as its crystal structure lost cohesion. Why, it asked. We offered you survival, we offered you a place in our empire. Why choose this? Smiled. It was a sad smile, full of grief for all the people who had died in this war, but it was also proud. Because some things are more important than survival, he said. Because our children deserve to be free. Because we would rather die standing than live on our knees. The transmission ended. Gave the only order it could. Retreat, it managed to say. All ships, retreat. What remained of the fleet tried to run. Ships that could still move turned toward the edge of the solar system. They fired their damaged engines and fled as fast as their broken technology would allow. Of the 800 ships that had come to conquer Earth, fewer than 200 escaped. The rest died in orbit, their crystal hulls crumbling into dust that fell through the atmosphere like glittering snow. High Commander died before reaching space. Its final report was transmitted by its remaining officers, a warning to the Galactic Council about the species called humanity. On Earth, people looked up at the sky and saw stars falling. They did not know at first what was happening. They did not understand that the lights streaking across the darkness were enemy ships dying. Then the broadcasts began, human voices, triumphant and tearful, announcing what seemed impossible. The fleet is retreating. I repeat, the enemy is retreating. We have won. Earth is free. In bunkers and caves and underwater habitats, millions of people heard those words. They cried. They screamed. They held each other and laughed with relief. In his underground command center, Admiral sat alone in his office. He did not celebrate. He was thinking about Captain, who had rammed her ship into the enemy. He was thinking about Ensign, who had fired until his weapons melted. He was thinking about all the brave men and women who had died so that this day could come. Commander found him there an hour later. "Sir," she said softly, "the President is asking for you. The whole world wants to celebrate." "I know," did not move. "Tell them I will be there soon." "Are you all right?" Finally looked up. His eyes were wet with tears he had not allowed himself to cry. "We won," he said. "But we won by becoming something terrible. We built a weapon that could destroy an entire species. We chose to fight even when it meant millions of our own people might die." "We chose freedom," said firmly. "Yes," stood slowly, his old bones aching. "We did. And now we have to decide what kind of species we want to be. We have proven that we can destroy. Now we must prove that we can build." He walked to the door, pausing to look back at the maps and screens that had guided him through the darkest year of human history. "The war is over," he said quietly. "The hard part begins now." Above Earth, the last of the falling crystal dust burned away in the atmosphere. The skies cleared. The sun shone down on a wounded but unbroken planet. Humanity had survived. Now it was time to heal. 1 year after the war ended, a single ship entered Earth's solar system. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons. It broadcast signals of peace on every frequency, moving slowly and carefully, making no threatening movements. The humans watched it come. Admiral, now retired from active duty, received the news at his home by the sea. He had spent the last year trying to forget the war, trying to live quietly, but he knew this moment would come eventually. "They want to talk," Commander told him over the communication screen. "The Galactic Council is sending a diplomatic mission." "How many ships?" "Just one, and they are asking permission to approach, very politely." Allowed himself a small smile. So they learned manners, that is a start. The alien ship landed in Seoul, in a plaza that had been rebuilt from the rubble of war. 12 different species emerged, their forms strange and beautiful and terrifying. There were tall bird-like creatures called the, who moved with graceful dignity. There were the beings of living metal who flowed like liquid silver. And there was a single observer, its crystal form still bearing the scars of the Silicon Plague. Millions of humans watched the broadcast as Ambassador walked out to meet the delegation. Was 73 years old. She had been a diplomat for most of her life, but during the war she had led a resistance cell in the ruins of. She had lost her husband and her son to bombs. She had every reason to hate the alien standing before her. But she was a professional, and she understood that the future mattered more than the past. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice calm and steady. "We are pleased to receive the Council's delegation." The leader stepped forward. It was called Envoy, and it spoke with a voice like gentle wind. "Ambassador," it said, "the Galactic Council extends its gratitude for your willingness to speak with us. We come with an offer of peace and partnership." Nodded slowly. She was aware of billions of eyes watching this moment. Every word she spoke would be remembered forever. "What exactly is the Council offering?" "Membership," replied. "Full membership in the galactic community with all rights and protections that includes protection from invasion, trade agreements, technology sharing, cultural exchange." It paused, and something like nervousness flickered through its feathered form. "We also request," it continued more quietly, "that humanity agree not to share certain technologies with other species." "You mean the Silicon Plague?" "Yes, the weapon you created has no defense. No species in the galaxy can protect themselves against it, if it were to spread beyond Earth." "The Council is afraid," said simply. Did not deny it. "We are afraid. We have ruled the stars for 12,000 years because we were the strongest. Now we know that strength is not enough. Your species has proven that will and sacrifice can defeat power." The observer stepped forward. Its crystal body was dull and cracked, a permanent reminder of what humans had done to its kind. "I am called Observer," it said, its voice still carrying the sound of grinding glass. "I was on a ship that escaped your planet. I watched my brothers and sisters die. I felt the plague tear through my own body." Met its eyes without flinching. "I am sorry for your loss. I mean that sincerely. We did not want this war." "I know," replied. "I have studied your species since the war ended. I have learned about your history, your cultures, your art and music and philosophy. I understand now that you did not fight because you wanted to kill. You fought because you had no choice." It was silent for a moment, colors shifting slowly in its damaged form. "We should have listened when your admiral warned us to leave. We should have done our research before we came, but we were arrogant. We thought we knew everything because we had conquered so many worlds." It bowed its crystalline head. "We were wrong." Felt something shift in her heart. For a year, she had thought of the only as enemies, as the monsters who had killed her family. But looking at this creature, she saw something else. She saw someone who had learned a painful lesson and was trying to be better. "Humanity accepts your offer of membership," she said finally. "We have no interest in conquest. We never did. We only wanted to live, to explore, to grow in peace." Relief rippled through the alien delegation, but was not finished. "However," she continued, her voice growing harder, "I want you to understand something. We will not forget what happened. We will not pretend that millions of our people did not die. We are willing to forgive because that is necessary for moving forward, but we will always remember." She stepped closer to the delegation. And despite her age and her small stature, something in her presence made even the largest alien step back. "That is who we are," she said. "We are the species that crawled out of caves and decided we wanted to touch the stars. We are the species that looked at death and said, 'Not today.' We are the species that survives, not because we are the strongest but because we simply do not know how to give up." The observer spoke again. "Then we have a question for you, Ambassador, a question the Council has debated since our defeat." Its voice was humble, stripped of the arrogance that had marked its kind. "What do you want?" Smiled. It was the smile of a grandmother, warm and knowing, but there was steel beneath it. "We want to be friends," she said. "We want to learn about your species, your cultures, your histories. We want to trade and explore and create beautiful things together. We want to join your community as partners, not conquerors." She paused and the steel showed through. "But if anyone threatens us again, if anyone tries to enslave or destroy us, they will discover what they learned." "And what is that?" asked. Far away in his house by the sea, Admiral watched the broadcast and answered the question at the same moment did. His voice was quiet, carrying the weight of every sacrifice, every death, every impossible choice. "Humanity does not fight to win," he said softly. "We fight to make sure our enemies lose, whatever the cost, whatever it takes." The Galactic Council agreed to every term. The treaty was signed that same day. Humanity became the first species in 12,000 years to join the galactic community through force rather than submission. They were given access to technologies that advanced their civilization by centuries. They were granted territories among the stars. They became full partners in the governance of a galaxy they had never even known existed. But more than that, they earned something no other species had ever achieved: respect. In the decades that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They built colonies on distant worlds. They traded with species that had ruled empires when humans were still living in caves. They learned and they taught and they grew. And everywhere they went, they carried with them the memory of the war. Admiral died 5 years after the treaty, surrounded by his family and his old crew. His last words were a message for who had become an admiral herself. "Tell them to never forget," he whispered. "Tell them to remember what we can do when we have to, and tell them to pray that we never have to do it again." They eventually recovered from the war, though their empire was never the same. They became allies with humanity, their shared history creating a strange but genuine friendship. Became an ambassador to Earth, spending decades learning about human culture and teaching its own people that the galaxy was more complicated than they had believed. History books on 1,000 worlds told the story of the First Contact War. They recorded the dates and the battles and the casualty numbers. But what they remembered most was not the weapons or the tactics. What they remembered was the stubbornness, the refusal to surrender, the willingness to sacrifice everything, the absolute, unbreakable determination of a species that simply would not quit. In schools across the galaxy, young aliens learned about the day the mighty empire came to a small blue planet and demanded submission. They learned about the humans who looked at impossible odds and smiled. They learned about the musicians who became soldiers and the scientists who became weapon makers. They learned about the old admiral who wagered everything on the belief that spirit was stronger than crystal. And they learned the lesson that they had paid so dearly to teach them. Never challenge humanity. Because humans do not calculate odds, they do not weigh costs and benefits, they do not make the rational choice. They make the stubborn choice. They make the defiant choice. They make the choice that says this is our home and we will die before we let you take it. And when you push them, when you corner them, when you give them no options but surrender or death, they find a third option. They find a way to win, even when winning is impossible. That is the legacy of the war. That is the truth the galaxy learned. Humanity endures, humanity fights, humanity survives. No matter what.